Have you ever felt that fear is lurking right beside you, even though everything around you seems so familiar? Sometimes experiences that seem ordinary hide terrifying mysteries changing our lives forever. In today's video, I will tell you 3 true stories, spine-chilling moments where fear is not just a feeling, but a tangible entity that follows and is ever present. From desolate roads, untamed forests, to moments of solitude in the dead of night, each story will take you on a journey full of surprises and haunting experiences. Turn on a small light, put on your headphones, and get ready to step into the world of the scariest stories you've ever heard. Story 1. The Shadow of the Stranger in the Night Forest. There are moments in life when you sense the presence of something that doesn't belong to this world. A cold feeling, one that can't be explained by reason. I experienced one of those moments on a hot summer night in Southern California in the quiet highlands beneath the Sierra Nevada mountains. At the time, I was 14, living in a small town with only a few traffic lights, where the biggest stores were still Kmart and quiet coffee shops. I had a habit of taking evening walks when the air had cooled down with my loyal Australian Shepherd dog. That night, I left home with my phone, a small knife in my pocket, and my dog on the 2-mile horse riding trail that cut through vast fields and stables. The sun had just set and the sky was shifting from blue to black as darkness enveloped everything. I estimated I had about 15 minutes more before reaching the horse centre where my mom was supposed to pick me up. But then, as I neared an intersection where the trail crossed into the woods, my dog suddenly stopped staring into the dark forest, afraid and unusually tense. I thought he might have spotted a wild animal like a cougar or boar, animals not uncommon in this area. I gently tugged on his collar, trying to coax him forward, but the anxiety was clear on his face. Then I saw him, a figure standing motionless under the dim moonlight about 10-15 feet into the shadows of the woods, his back to me. He was a man about 6 feet tall, thin, wearing a light blue outfit resembling a doctor's scrubs, which seemed worn and frayed. What was most terrifying was that he was barefoot, walking on the cold, damp ground. He stood there, his head tilted upwards toward the sky, arms, outstretched palms, facing forward. But he didn't move at all like a living statue, but trembling slightly, as if controlled by an invisible force. I wasn't sure if he was having a seizure, but clearly he couldn't control his movements. My dog started barking aggressively, growling low in warning. I was terrified, but I tried to call out, "Are you okay?" No response, no movement. He just stayed in that strange position. Then, without warning, he suddenly stepped out of the shadows and moved closer toward us. I could only see his shape, not his face, because he kept his head tilted toward the sky. I couldn't wait to see what he would do. Silently, I slipped around him and began running, my heart pounding, trying to escape from that eerie figure. When I reached the horse center, I looked back and saw him standing at the edge of the trail, still motionless, as if waiting for me. I ran non-stop until I found Mrs. Penny, an older, difficult neighbor I didn't particularly like. But at that moment, I just wanted someone to share my fear with. She looked at me, panting from exhaustion and noticing the tension on my face. My mum arrived just then, and on the way home, I cried uncontrollably, my mind haunted by the image of that man. I told the police everything, but they only found a few faint barefoot prints nearby, a cold, lifeless trace that someone had walked barefoot on the ground, but no one knew who he was or where he came from. That story became a ghost that haunted me for years. Dark dreams, sharp breaths, and the feeling of being watched, though I never saw his face. Maybe you won't believe it. Maybe you'll think it's just an illusion. But to me, that shadowed figure is still alive, lurking somewhere in the dark silence of the mountains, waiting for someone to pass by, leaving faint, barefoot prints on the cold, sandy path. Story 2. The Haunting Night at Alouette Lake. In the summer of 2019, my partner and I decided to take a long trip across several states in North America, with our final destination being Golden Ears Park in Vancouver, Canada, a place famous for its magnificent natural scenery and the breathtakingly clear Alouette Lake. We had planned everything carefully, bringing along a large tent, a cooler to keep fruits and vegetables fresh, and some pre-cut snacks for the road. After several days on the road, we finally arrived at this dream destination. Alouette Lake was like a living oil painting. The water was crystal clear cold as it touched my bare feet, and a cascade of white waterfalls surrounded by ancient forest. We leisurely strolled, took photos, and enjoyed the fresh air. Everything was perfect, impossible to complain about. On the first night at the campsite, there was only one other couple staying nearby, and the silence was so profound that even the wind seemed to echo eerily. We went to bed early, but in the middle of the night, I woke up to a faint rustling outside the tent. My partner was still sound asleep, snoring steadily. I told myself it could be a wild animal, maybe a squirrel or raccoon moving around the area, but the sound grew closer, clearer, as if someone was walking around the tent each step, light yet deliberate. My heart began to race. I turned on the flashlight on my phone, and for a brief moment I saw a faint figure standing right outside the tent. The face was indistinct in the darkness, but the figure was motionless, making no sound. I tried to stay calm, turned to wake my partner, and whispered, "There's someone outside the tent." We both heard footsteps moving away, but then the sound of an engine starting, either a motorcycle or a car, echoed not far away. I curiously peeked outside and noticed a dark-coloured truck parked nearby with no headlights on. The person inside was too far to make out their face, but they stood still for a moment before driving off. For the rest of the night, I stayed awake in our car, carefully locking the doors, my hand still clutching the fruit knife I had brought along. The next morning, despite being exhausted and shaken, we packed up and decided to leave the campsite as soon as the gate opened at dawn. No one said much, but we both felt that something terrifying had happened during the night. I don't know if it was a bad person or just a strange misunderstanding, but one thing was clear. We were no longer safe in the wilderness, where shadowy figures could appear at any moment. Story 3. The Dark Call on the Desolate Trail. I will tell you one of the scariest experiences of my life, something I've never shared with anyone, except a few close family members. At the time, I was just 26, trying to balance family life and my responsibilities as a father. One summer day, I decided to take my two young children, my 3-year-old and 5-year-old, out for some fresh air to give my wife a break. I had heard about a hiking trail in the remote region of Utah, about 15 feet above the ground, known for its wild beauty and challenges for climbers. That day wasn't meant to be for hiking. We simply came to explore and pick a better day for the real trip. But as with most terrifying events, perhaps it was fate that led us into a nightmare. Upon arrival, I quickly realized that the trail was quite treacherous and not suitable for young children, so we simply wandered around the entrance enjoying the scenery. As the three of us prepared to head back to the car, I saw a figure standing next to my truck. It was a man of indeterminate age, disheveled and mysterious in appearance. He was looking into the driver's side door, then crouching down to check under the vehicle. After that, the man climbed into the truck bed, unaware that we were approaching. My heart tightened. With two children beside me, I had no idea what his intentions were. I decided to stay quiet, waiting for him to notice and leave. However, he didn't move. The silence and his cold demeanor sent a chill down my spine. I gathered all my courage and shouted, "Get out of my truck!" The man only poked his head out slightly, then crouched down again. I had no choice. I told my children to stay put and cover their ears. My hands were shaking as I drew my handgun, a self-defense tool I always carried when going to secluded places, and fired a warning shot into the ground near the truck. He immediately jumped down, hid behind the truck for a moment, and then fled into the deep woods. When I checked the truck, I discovered something horrifying. All four tires had been slashed with precision, not through brute force, but with the meticulous skill of someone experienced. The gas tank in the truck bed had multiple puncture holes leaking fuel steadily. Just a small spark, a tiny flame, would have turned the truck into a ticking time bomb. I immediately called the police. They arrived quickly, searched for clues, but couldn't find the man. The case remained a mystery for the local police, but for me it was a life or death experience I would never forget. 2 years later, a wandering criminal with a lengthy criminal record in the area named Jason Pogg was arrested for various crimes. He was suspected of being involved in my incident, but there was no solid evidence. Although I was angry about what happened to my truck, I am grateful that the kids were safe. Every time I recall that scene, my heart races, and I can't stop wondering if that day hadn't involved a gun. If he had done something worse, what would have happened to us? I've never forgotten that night. The quiet footsteps in the darkness, the cold stare of the nameless man, and the smell of gasoline rising like a sign of an impending nightmare. If you're listening to this story, always be cautious. Never be complacent when venturing into desolate areas, and don't hesitate to prepare a self-defense plan for yourself. Thank you for taking the time to listen to these terrifying stories. Some mysteries remain unsolved, some shadows will never leave, and some memories will haunt us forever. If you found these stories haunting and captivating, don't forget to hit like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss the next chilling storytelling videos. And if you have any terrifying experiences you'd like to share, leave a comment below. I'd love to hear your story. Be cautious when stepping out into the late night darkness, for the shadows are not always where you find peace. Overbot.